Welcome back, NPL viewers, to the Week 2 Minor League Power Rankings. I am Richard, and unfortunately my co-host Trev the King will not be available for this recording. He is not feeling very well and so will be unable to accompany me, but he did leave me his justifications, so just like last week when he covered for me when Camtasia was proving why it deserves to be known as the best program in the entire world, I will be covering for him this week and going over his justifications which he left me. So before I get into the rankings though, I would just like to touch on a few things. The first being that, and I think I speak for both of us when I say this, but the games this week were rather lackluster. And I'm not saying that there weren't any good games, because there definitely were. I just mean to say that there were only a couple games that actually stood out to either of us, so his notes are rather sparse. I don't really have a lot to say on most of the battles, so this should be a very quick video. It should go by pretty quickly. So that'll be nice, because these videos do tend to get pretty long. But the second thing that I actually have to talk about is in regards to my ranks, and I am actually voiding one of the teams. So what you'll be seeing is that my rank 12 will be blank and only the first 11 ranks will be filled in. This is because one of the coaches, Monotui, the coach of the Tampa Bay Lux Rays, has decided to quit the NPL. I won't go too much into that, he just wasn't enjoying his time as a coach in this league, so he decided to drop out, and he graciously finished his weeks 2 through 4 in order to give us more time to find a replacement coach and get everything settled in that regard. But his heart really wasn't in it for the week 2 game, and even though he, spoilers, ended up winning his week 3 and week 4 games, you could still just tell that his heart really wasn't in it. He was just getting the battles done and doing the best that he could. And out of respect to Monotui, I will not be giving him a rank in these rankings. It just seems kind of trivial in light of him leaving the league, so he will still be in contact with us every now and then, but regardless, I just think it's not quite that fair to include him in the rankings when he wasn't really at his best or even that invested in the league at the time. I will still be ranking his opponents in this week and the next 2 weeks according to how they played against him, but again, out of fairness to Mono himself, I will not be ranking his team in these rankings. So that is why there's a void. It does slightly skew the ranks, and you'll notice that some of my teams are actually in the same spot as they were in the previous week, and this really only applies to kind of the bottom 4 or 5 teams, because again, I don't know where I would have put Mono if I hadn't voided his team, but it probably would have been on the brink of the top half, maybe ranks 5 to 7, depending on whatever I decided to use as my justifications. But because his team is not in the rankings, the bottom, like I said, 4 or 5 teams kind of shifted up one. It actually did put a team in line with Trevs Rankings. I know in the past our rankings have kind of been a little bit separated from each other, which is totally fine, you know, like having the same ranks for each person can get kind of boring, but the skew in the rankings allowed for one of the teams in our bottom half to be ranked at the same rank, although this person would probably be 1 rank lower if there was not a void. As for the top half though, we actually do have a few teams in common. Again, because I'm not entirely sure where I would have put Mono if I wasn't voiding his team, there may be 1 or 2 teams that would possibly be skewed, but for the most part we actually, I think, have 3 teams in common for that top half, so that'll be exciting, and I'll talk about that a little bit more when we get there. But let's get into the rankings. So I guess I'll start off with Trevs Rankings, because he does have a full 12 teams on his ranks, and his number 12 is the Detroit Pincers, coached by Ashley. His justification was that Ashley overall proved that she could have moments where she could play at a high quality, however she still made plenty of unnecessary, boneheaded plays, his words, not mine, in her loss, which resulted in her ultimately being down there at number 12. Now, Ashley would actually be 1 rank lower on my power rankings were they not skewed under these current circumstances, but for now she's at number 10, and the reason for this, for her being in the second to last spot, is, I'll just get into that right now, but for me, she kind of proved, yes, like Trev said, that she could have moments where she could play at a high quality, and we know from outside the league that she is actually quite a good battler. She's just been kind of having an off couple of past few seasons due to, you know, real life and stuff, and kind of trying to shake the rust off, but failing to, basically, and she does kind of have that tendency to beat herself in certain games, kind of like, I would kind of compare her to Steve of the GBA, how people say that, oh, he Steved himself, he beat himself, basically, and that's what Ashley tends to do to herself too, I think. She did lose against Parker, which I had down at number 11 last week. I moved him up a little bit this week. Ashley did almost pull out the win against Parker, but she made a few questionable plays, and I think some high-low roll shenanigans came in at the end there and kind of screwed her over a little bit. Not that Parker didn't put up a good fight, just that it was kind of one of those lackluster games, and it just seems like Trev has a little bit less faith in her than I do. A lot of my rankings now were kind of dependent on who B2 and where they were before in comparison to the other people, so it wasn't terribly hard for me to decide the ranks until I got to like the top 4. But come next week, if she and Stab remain winless, Stab, who is my number 11, would be number 12 if the ranks were not skewed, but if they both remain winless, I will then have to start getting deeper into the battles themselves and seeing who actually had the better or worse performance in that case. But the fact that she was up a little bit higher to begin with kind of saved her. The fact that she and Stab both have not won also kind of saved her. Stab himself, I will get into right now, the coach of the Chicago Sacred Fire, my rank number 11. This week, he played against the Miami Heat Train, coached by Andrew, and lost by a very narrow 1-0 margin. It is Trev's opinion that he very easily could have come out of that game with a win, and maybe he could have, but he still lost. But he was very low for me to begin with. I believe I had him at the preseason rankings at number 10, and the two teams that were below him won in their Week 1 matches. Stab lost, so he moved down to number 12. Week 2, he still lost, and he's still at number 12, or rather 11 in this case, but I just didn't have a whole lot of faith in his team to begin with, and Stab really hasn't shown me that I should put faith in his team, so that's why I have him at currently number 11, which is still the minimum rank that he could achieve under these circumstances. So next I'll get into Trev's number 11, the North Carolina Tyranitar Heels, coached by Parker, and his comments are as follows. For the first time this season, Parker is not my last ranked team. However, while he did win, he beat the low-ranked Detroit Pincers and overall did not impress me terribly much. Once he can impress me with a good prep or a good win versus a higher quality team, I will be happy to move him up. So I do actually have Parker up a little bit higher in these rankings, so I will get into that when I get there. For now, I'm just going to move on to Trev's number 10 ranked team, the Chicago Sacred Fire. Trev starts off the comment by saying that while Stab did lose, he did barely lose to Trev's week number 3 team, Andrew of the Miami Heat Trans, and Trev posits that Stab should have won due to the fact that Andrew's max roll on Ironhead against Stab's Gardevoir probably cost Stab the game, but despite him being 0-2, he's played under a harder schedule than Trev's number 11 team, Parker, and so far still has a higher differential. Unfortunately, he still lost, resulting in him staying at number 10. So I've already gone over my number 10, technically the number 11 team, so I'll move on to my number 9 team, which is the San Francisco 49tails, coached by Boo. No, he did not actually move up in rank despite losing. He actually stayed at the same rank, it's just that, again, my rankings are skewed because I am omitting a team for this week and the next 2 weeks. But I have Boo still above Ashley because while Ashley was ranked higher to begin with, and while both of them are 0-2 teams, I still feel a little bit more confident in Boo's team, at least I want to be a little bit more confident in Boo's team. Ashley has given me a bit more reason to feel a bit less confident in her ability to pull off a good season, especially due to her record last season. But Boo, you're kind of getting closer to that honorary rank 13 spot that you've been on about before, so I really hope that you can start pulling back and winning your matches, but unfortunately I have to put you at number 9, aka number 10. So that's what I have to say there. Again, really, I don't have a whole lot to say about these matches. Just for the record, Boo did lose against my former rank 5 team, Chelseadra, coached by Vic, and Vic obviously has a very scary team, and that might have prevented Boo from moving down a rank, and he still was only ranked number 5 for week 2, so there wasn't a whole lot I can do in terms of punishing Boo for the loss. But moving on, we'll get into Trev's number 9 team, the Tampa Bay Lux Rays, coached by Monatui, or formerly coached by Monatui. And Trev says, nothing much to say here. Salem outplayed Mono and was able to win somewhat easily. This is why Mono is number 9. Again, because of the fact that Mono is quitting and his heart really wasn't in that game, I find that somewhat of an unfair assessment. But Trev saw fit to give him the rankings, so that is where he is on Trev's rankings. We'll move right on to Trev's number 8, the Virginia Tech Frokies, coached by Cutness. And Trev says that I can't say much other than that he got rocked by agility baton pass. Maybe he should have prepped better for the possibility, but I won't dock him too much for losing to it. So that's fair enough. I actually have Cutness at my number 8 as well, but he still probably would have moved down a rank. Again, I don't know where I would have put Mono, but somewhere between ranks 5 and 8, maybe 5 to 7, 6 to 7, probably would have been my likely spot if I were going to give him a rank. But Virginia gets a pass, they stay at number 8, technically, and the reason for that is because Cutness, he's a nice guy, he's a good dude. I've talked with him, seems really cool. He did kind of make me look silly when he beat me in his tryouts, so I have to respect him for that. Unfortunately, I can't judge him based on these things. I can only judge him based on the team that he drafted in the minor league and how he is using it so far, and right now, unfortunately, Cutness is not really making that strong of a showing to me. I do have him ranked above San Francisco, Detroit, and Chicago, mainly due to the fact that he has 1 win and they have 0. But, I mean, a 1-1 record really isn't that bad, especially for week 2, but his performance has left me a little bit shaky in my beliefs, a little doubtful, so I have to react accordingly. He did lose to my number 1 ranked team, the Brisbane Braylooms. It was a pretty devastating loss, though, and as far as Trev's comment goes, I mean, yeah, Palm did have to get permission from Jolt, I believe, in order to bring 2 Pokemon that both had Baton Pass, but they also only had a speed boosting move. They didn't have any other types of boosting moves. You can have multiple Baton Pass Pokemon if the others are purely for momentum, but due to the fact that he was using the same boosting stat, Palm was able to get permission to use dual Baton Pass users with, I believe, agility was the move. So is that cheating, or technically cheating? I would disagree with that. Trev seems to think otherwise, but regardless, it is what it is, and that is our rank 8. So moving on, I'll go back to Trev for his number 7 rank, the San Francisco 49tails. Trev says that despite being 0 and 2, he is nearly top half due to losing to Chelseadra, pretty much due to a Draco miss. Have to move him down a spot for losing, but I was impressed by him. And I have to agree, Boo was decently impressive in that match. He did put up a good fight against a very strong team. He did get haxed pretty bad, I will agree, but he was lower for me to begin with, which is why I have him lower, and he was a bit higher for Trev to begin with, so it makes sense that he's only at Trev's number 7 spot. I've already said what I had to say about Boo, so we'll just move on to my number 7, which is the North Carolina Tyranitar Heels, again, coached by Parker. So again, this is the case where because he is now 1-1, I did move him up against the 3 0-2 teams. I did also move him up above Cutness, another 1-1 team. Again, because like I said, I'm a little bit shaky on Cutness's team, and I did have North Carolina higher up in my rankings to begin with, so I'm just a little bit more willing to put my faith in Parker, and yeah, that's about all I have to say. I already kind of covered the match when I talked about Ashley. So we'll move on to talking about the top half of the ranks. Trev and I at number 6 actually both have the same team, which is pretty cool. We have the Dons of the World, coached by Envy, and again, I've been saying this the whole video, but I really just want to stress how much these ranks may or may not be skewed. Mono may have fallen somewhere between ranks 5, 6, 7, so Envy may or may not be at rank 6, technically, but this is really hard to say because aside from my first 5 teams, I really can't say whether or not these ranks would have been skewed. But the first 5 teams definitely are where they should be. The last 5 would be definitely moved down a rank, so it's really kind of the whole 6, 7, 8 area that is kind of giving the ranks a little bit trouble for me. But we both have Envy at rank 6, and Trev's justification is that Envy almost upset his number 1 team in a 0-0 tie. It was Michael's win, but Envy played it very close to a 0-0, and Trev was just very impressed and moved him up a place despite the fact that he lost. So Envy was actually at number 7 in Trev's week 1 rankings. For me, Envy actually stayed at the same place. He lost to my former number 4, Trev's former number 1. Michael's a very good player. Envy's a very good player. It was a close, narrow 0-0 loss, a double down. Couldn't really punish him. He lost a close game to a top-tier opponent. Couldn't really move him up or down, so he stays at number 6 for me. Now we move on to our number 5s, and we again actually have the same team in this spot, which is kind of refreshing. Obviously, it's cool to see people with different ranks and different opinions and why they chose those ranks, but it's also, at times, nice to see a few teams that match up for both players. It also makes the power rankings a little bit easier. But Trev's justification for his number 5 team, the Kansas City Rogan Royals, coached by Salem, is that, and this is a direct quote from Trev, "This is why I called him the team with the most potential in the preseason. Despite a tough matchup, he was able to overcome it and beat Mono pretty convincingly in my eyes." Now, again, I'm going to have to kind of criticize the phrasing here, that he beat Mono pretty convincingly, because, again, Mono was not very invested in that match. That's not to say, though, that Mono isn't a formidable opponent, because he is. He's a very good player with a very good team, and regardless of his investment in a match, as we've seen in weeks 3 and 4, Mono can pull off a good performance regardless. He just really didn't have his heart in this game, so again, it's kind of unfair to criticize him for that, but I do definitely commend Kansas City, Salem, for getting the win over Monotui, and yes, I did move them up to rank 5, partly because they won, whereas the team that was ahead of them, MV at rank 6, lost, but it's also partly because Kansas City was my former rank 2 in the preseason, and they did get a win against a formidable, albeit out-of-it, opponent, so it feels good to move them back up and to be able to have them at rank 5, and who knows, maybe they'll continue to climb into that top 4. Speaking of the top 4, here we are. Now, Trev, for his justifications, doesn't really have a whole lot to say for his ranks 4 through 3. I'll go over the teams. At number 4, he has the Brisbane Braylooms, coached by Palman, aka Palm. At number 3, he has the Miami Heatran, coached by Andrew. And at number 2, he has the Chelseadra, coached by Vic. Trev says that he has these 3 grouped together because all 3 of them did not really impress him in a certain aspect, whether it was their team prep or the way they played, or maybe because they got some luck with their roles or other hacks, but he's not going to penalize any of them because they did win, so that's his justification for those ranks. Trev did in fact have the same 4 teams in the same 4 spots for the last week's ranks. As for my rankings this week, they are a little bit different. Most notably, the Tampa Bay Lux Rays did drop out from number 3 to being voided, although because of the loss, if Mono were still continuing with the league, they would have dropped down anyway, so that enabled a few teams to move up. For example, the Chelseadra actually moved up to my rank 4, and again, I really don't have that much to say. Vic narrowly beat one of my bottom-ranked teams, the San Francisco 49tails, by a 1-0 and almost lost, but he did win. He was formerly at my rank number 5, so I moved him up to rank number 4, and this is the team that I said had the most potential to improve in the league, so I gotta give him a rank up to kind of make up for how harsh I was on his team in the preseason ranks. So Vic is at number 4. Good job, Vic. Keep up the good work, keep winning, and you will probably have a good bid for that number 1 spot at some point in the later weeks. Next, for my number 3, I actually have the same rank as Trev, the Miami Heatran. However, while Trev has had him at rank 3 for every single week so far, Andrew actually dropped down from being my rank number 2 back to my rank number 3, which I had him at for my preseason ranks as well. And really what it comes down to is just that Michael in his match against Envy just impressed me a lot more than Andrew did in his match against Stab. Michael was formerly my rank 4, so a 2-rank jump really isn't all that extreme. Definitely not as extreme as the 5-rank jump that Brisbane made from between the preseason and week 1. But Michael definitely did impress me, and I even actually considered putting Michael at the first spot because he really did impress the hell out of me. When we get to Trev's rank 1, which is coming up next, I'll do that next before my rank 1, you'll get to see Trev's comments, which I absolutely agree with. So I put Michael at number 2, debated about putting him at number 1. I'll give my reasons why I didn't do that, why I kept Palm at number 1 in a moment, but for now, we're going to cover Trev's comment on Michael and his Green Bay Palkias. Trev says, "This game proved that Michael is a legitimate number 1 to me. Envy is an amazing battler, and beating him in such a close, exciting game in the way that he did impressed me. He stays at the same spot, but there is a bit of a distance between number 1 and number 2 for me." So those were Trev's words. My ranks are a bit closer, as I've already mentioned. Palm and his Brisbane Braylooms barely hold on to that number 1 spot, and really it just comes down to the fact that even I agree that moving him up 5 spaces from number 6 to number 1 after just 1 week was a little bit extreme, but I really feel validated that Palm is proving to me why he deserves to be number one. I was kind of also very impressed by what I saw of him outside of the league when he was just doing some ladder matches, hearing him talk about all these different things. His knowledge of Pokemon sets and moves and team structure and whatnot far surpasses my own. Even though I am a majors coach, I certainly do not have that type of extensive knowledge on hand of all these different things that Palm and several other members of the minor leagues and most members of the major leagues have, and I mean, I do know how to access that knowledge, and I do know when to access that knowledge for the most part, but just to have it on hand like that, I found really impressive, and so that did kind of influence me in putting him at rank 1, but he definitely proved why he deserves to be there. And Trev didn't say it last week, it was in my notes for him, but he didn't mention it. Palm, I'm giving you your own honorary rank 0, just the unmatchable rank. Even though the ranks were really close and I really debated whether putting Green Bay or Brisbane at number 1, I just have to give a bit of a nod to my fellow Brit and say, well done, Palm, good job, and keep up the good work, and I can definitely see you staying within the top 3 throughout the rest of the season if you continue to put in the good work and win your matches, so don't let me down, do it for the motherland. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. The recording time currently says that it's at 58 minutes, almost verging on the hour, but I promise you it will not be that long, certainly. I just have a lot of parts to edit out because I kind of messed up a little bit here and there, and I decided just to keep the recording going, so I'll have a lot of outtakes, a lot of editing to do, so the video shouldn't be too long. Hopefully next week I'll have my co-host Trev the King back, and we can do these rankings together. So that's it for me. Please be sure to check out the NPL channel. Trev's channel and my channel will be in the description below as well. Check out the NPL website if you are not already an NPL member. There are some short bios on all of the coaches, we have a little bit more information about the league itself, all kinds of cool stuff, and I will hopefully be here next week with Trev to bring you the Week 3 NPL Minors Power Rankings. So with all of that said, take it easy everyone.